Up to the time when I moved to Latvia, and then also during the whole 3 years that I have lived there, I have somehow always underestimated the threat of Russia lurking just 260 kilometers away from Riga, the city I live in. This light approach of mine wasn't even particularly shaken, and I am ashamed of confessing that to you, during the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But only recently, with the totally unprovoked invasion of Putin in all Ukraine, I have noticed in me a sheer sense of awareness towards who's really who and what has always been at stake since I moved to the eastern border. With the homonymous podcast, Latvian journalist Kristaps Andrejsons had taken me, the foreigner, for a walk many times in Riga, giving me the chance with his words to see somehow the essence hiding behind the looks of the many local introvert. Through the street, he would tell me of the heavy footprint the Soviet society would leave in his country. This has probably been the best guide an Italian like me could ever have here in Latvia. All until that point, 14 days ago, when all these interesting digressions about the old USSR retracted back to the fundamental evil that is its very core. Now, for a silly European like me, all this seems to be so real and disastrous than ever. Thank you, Kristaps.
I'm just a bit overworked, but then what's going to happen is I'm going to be in Riga, and then I'm going to Rome for the first time in my life, for because
Yes.
we had planned this trip for a long period because it's the Ides of March, and I love history, and everyone's been telling me that what kind of a historian are you if you haven't been to Rome. So before all this started, we wanted to go there, and now it's kind of silly because I'll have to do some work from there. But I hope to get in as much of Italy as I can. So yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
like for even people that are no historians, I'll tell you, I'm originally from Sicily, and every time that we think about Rome, we always think that there is an unmanageable amount of history that we can't even
Mm.
figure out. It's just it feels like from a novice point of view. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and if you are
Yeah.
into it, it must feel even more overwhelming. I would say
Yeah,
yes.
one thing that was like I already looked up things where not to go because I don't want to go to the places where there are tourists everywhere because in Riga we have the same thing in Old Town, so
Yeah.
you want to go to the places where there are less tourists. I really couldn't manage the tickets because I want to go to the villa. I think it was Borgia mansion, and like I've planned some places, but. Well, there are going to be some obvious ones to go, but if you'll have some general advice for what to do in Italy and what not to do, then just feel free to write me them. But okay, let's start. Let's do
You
this because
let's start over. Let's start over. Absolutely. We'll
oh,
go. I'll go
sorry.
back to it on a private. I will give you some advice.
Yeah,
All
fine.
right. So
Mhm.
well, calling from Riga here, from Latvia, from your home country, and talking. Very excited to talk to Kristaps Andrejsons. I've been following your podcast since I moved to Latvia
Oh,
to get a better idea about what is the approach towards the east from a country that is not Italy in that sense, from a country where there is a different awareness. And it's so sad to talk to each other after this awareness has actually come true. So this is something that is particularly shocking in that sense. But you've been talking about this for a long time, and the fact that now we are at a situation where we are in some sort of gotcha moment, that is probably not the best way to put it, is extremely stressful and revelatory at the same time. I would say, first of all, I would like to ask you. You told me that you are at the border. I was listening to your latest podcast. I thought you were traveling towards Warsaw, but you're actually at the border now.
yeah, we had a bit of change of plans. I went back with the train. I'll return home tomorrow later on, but things move so fast and quick. I just had to help some local people with organizing this stuff. That's the hardest part
Yes.
of traveling and all this. But I'll be in Riga tomorrow evening, so that hasn't changed. I'll just have to change some plans to manage to get to the airport. Yeah,
Of course.
but weird.
Weird, and especially if you listen to the latest podcast that you put on, there are some quite strong situation that you've been in, which are probably not the only ones that you've been in your career, but I would say they are particularly touching. And I would say that from my point of view, a bit more relaxed. I'm a bit ashamed of saying that. This morning, I was teaching English to one of my students this afternoon, and we had a class while he was talking from the car, driving to Helm from Latvia to possibly come and pick up one of his colleagues from a German company that tried to drive away from, help me with the pronunciation, Zhytomyr, I guess, Zhytomyr.
Yeah, Zhytomyr,
Tried to
yes.
drive away from Zhytomyr to get to the border. It was extremely slow, and he was waiting there, and he was going to wait there for his family. The whole family of his colleague, only the wife and the kids can join his friend from Latvia to be brought to Latvia, because men cannot leave the country, apparently. Is it correct?
Yeah, it is
Between
correct.
18, yes.
Between 18 and 60, and there are a lot of control posts on the Ukrainian side. Like I know that from Lvov to the border, and Lvov is the closest major city to the border. There
Yeah.
are 13 control posts. They're basically every 10 kilometers or so, or even less. And the situation is really difficult because people get their passports checked constantly, and yeah, and also those few that manage to get out illegally, I have to say that there have been cases where the women and children, if you are a Ukrainian man and you don't want to join this whole operation, then yeah, the local women and children will look at you. They will not be exactly satisfied about your decision to leave,
Of
and I
course.
can understand them because this whole I'm used to more, well, this happens in the situations of crisis. We uh, tend to react more aggressive to things. We maybe don't understand exactly what's happening all the time, and we don't make rational decisions. This is why I always say to people, this is what my happiness is mandatory slogan means. It's just don't
I like
panic
that.
and
Yeah.
keep your cool, because if you go crazy, then all sorts of things might happen, and it might cause worse consequences. For example, one of them, which is important, is that today Latvian media and also the Irish Times and the Daily Mail, all those people reported that because they saw it somewhere on Twitter, that the United Nations has banned the use of war and invasion when it comes to the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. And it just wasn't the case. It was just another piece of disinformation. And now I just spent some time explaining to people, and there are proof. But that's another thing. If we just allow these things to blow us up, and if we just react to this, even though we are all emotional people, we have to, in these situations, take everything super calmly. This is what I'm doing. I mean, hey, I haven't properly slept for a long while. I am tired, but I'm really trying to stay calm myself. So, to anyone who goes to help, by the way, it's an also important thing. Always remember that the people who are coming over, they'll be stressed and they'll be worried, and they might yell at you. They might not understand what's happening. It's your job to make sure that they're calm too. Sorry for these tangents. It's just that
No,
it's
no,
all in my
no.
head now.
I welcome them in full, because I'm thinking about another border that I've been living in for a while, even if I moved away in different places, was actually southern Sicily, and it is another border of, well, I don't have to tell you, you know that, another border of Europe, where we have actually a lot of people that be risking their life and through organized crime getting tickets to go through the sea from North Africa. And clearly, I witness in the population, my people as well, regarding what you said, I witnessed that the attitude of the people that come over are clearly stressed, that they're not going to be necessarily polite. They went through a journey through the desert. They've been put some drugs in their pocket to pay back for the ticket once they get to the inland in Europe, and already their life has been going through hell. And clearly, and when the people in Sicily, which are beautiful people normally speaking, but already employed with a certain drizzle of xenophobia, which is usually bigger when people are not working because it's a war between poor people sometimes. They get to see these poor people coming over and they start actually uh, maybe saying that they're angry that these people shouldn't be there because they should be a priority for people from Italy to actually occupy those few jobs left. And then Salvini, which is one of those right-wing flirters with Putin or whatever, will welcome their rage and will make a party out of that. And it's so important what you're saying, to stay calm and wear other people's shoes and get informed as much as possible. I'm going to say something very quickly.
Mhm.
Your podcast has been very important. Me meeting my girlfriend has been very important. She's from Latvia. I've been in Latvia for
Oh,
3 years, and I have another perspective of how it works and how this, I think Dan Carlin called it geopolitical PTSD, that we
yes.
don't have it. In the rest of Europe, we don't have it. It's important to understand what's going on to keep calm. Sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
oh, if you listen to the latest Dan Carlin episode
Yeah.
about the common sense about this whole situation, then hello, I'm the Latvian friend he mentioned there. We had a
Yes,
conversation with
I
him.
know.
So
I know
so
you are.
yeah, but like I felt really ashamed because just as this began, I was tasked to do a lot of work for the media foreign policy magazine, and I forgot to press record. Imagine this: you get an interview with Dan Carlin for 2 hours, and you sit there and you talk, and then you just forget to press record. Biggest
Yes,
mistake of
yes,
my life.
I heard your frustration.
One thing though. Talking about Italy, go Napoli. I'm watching Serie A,
Oh
man.
yes, absolutely. Go Maradona as well, and all the history behind it.
No, it's like
Yes, I've been told.
as you know, being a football fan in Latvia is not an easy thing to do. Everyone is just a hockey fan, but
No, no, you're a pariah.
I just haven't really slept. So if I'm rambling, then I apologize beforehand.
No, 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 no. And also, I'm always welcome to take tangent into things that are moving away
Hmm.
from your main occupation. So I understand you've been doing this for too much, but I wanted to put a couple of.
Hmm.
I want to take advantage of the fact that I'm interviewing you. So I got some questions for you. Um, right. So this is something that has always bugged me a bit,
Hmm.
and um, and he has to live. This big question that I have has to live with the fact that I'm a bit new to this wake up call towards Russia and the way that it's actually behaving. So when I was younger and I was growing up in Italy, the Italian society always had a more courteous way towards the legacy of communism uh, compared to the legacy of maybe fascism or things like that. So it's something that they always kind of they looked at in a more polite way. I remember I used to have teachers with the beard dreaming about Russia or things like that.
Mm.
I'm going to move a bit forward and say that despite I think we can tell that Russia has somehow recognized some sort of ideological independence from the West, from the idea of messianism or even the terrible through, I don't know, you help me with that. I say uh,
Well,
the
well,
idea of dusha, the idea of a soul from Tolstoy, all these ideas they want to move from, want to be very original in this sense. Um, no, I wanted to tell you, despite they claim some independence towards the West in terms of values and things like that, historically, despite, and we are in a situation that is extremely tragic and we don't know if we're going to be alive to witness the future, I wanted to ask you one thing. Do you think that internet, everything, and the protests that are happening in Russia kind of show the fact that change is inevitable? So,
well, that's a big one you asked me here. Okay, so
yes.
I also think that Russia, as we see today, for their imperialism to end, Russia also sadly has to collapse because currently, and I defend this position strongly, Russia is not a country like Italy because you were sorry, You guys were born in the revolution yourselves. I've read a lot about Italian history, actually. I know about the red shirts and the Garibaldi and everything, and
Yes.
and Victor Emmanuel. See, Italy basically was a bunch of city states which then came together. It was a bloody period. Napoleon was involved, a lot of tragic, but you kind of united. But and I can kind of compare, and I'll use Italian metaphors here because I can. Um, Imagine this. Imagine if basically every business ever in Italy would be just in Rome. Okay, so it's kind of like, I know that you have some south north division, except take everything in Italian south and take all those, oh sorry, Italian north, take every Italian
Yeah.
northern city, Florence, everything, and stuff it in one town, which is Moscow. Okay, so Moscow and St. Petersburg, these two places are like the center, and everything else is basically like treated like colonies. Those people will start to protest more because the people who get the oil, who get the diamonds, who get the coal, who get all the resources, they are literally treated just like the British treated people in India. The Russian
Mm.
Empire is basically a colonial empire, except it's not by sea, but by land, It's a land-based empire. So I think that the people will protest, and now there are rumors of a coup happening, but I believe that at one point, actually, because there are a lot of regions in Siberia where Russians are about like what, maybe 10% of the population, even ethnic Russians. Everyone else is like, at that point, Tatars or Chukchi or whatever. And Tatars tried to get their independence in 1992, and they were just ignored. So I believe that what's going to happen most likely is that there will be anti-war protests, and then I really believe that some coup might happen, some uprising in Kremlin, or some change in the Kremlin. But I think that these anti-war protests, they will not turn Russia democratic, because they will rather go in their own separatist way. Like Kurils will vote to join Japan, Karelia will want to join Finland, and then like Moscow, St. Petersburg, with some close areas will remain what I don't know how we'll call it, Muscovy. Maybe that's going to be still Russia. But I think Far East is going to be taken over by China, and a lot of splitting up will happen. And that'll happen no matter
So,
what Russia does in Ukraine, because those anti-war protests, that's going to probably happen. That's my theory, and I believe that the most. I give it about 90% chance of happening.
well, it makes more sense than actually my idea. I guess that the fact that Russia is not a monolithic country in that sense, it's kind
Yeah,
of, as you said, is a like colonialism within the country, not divided by the sea. And okay, so in that sense, that this aspect will press more on change and actually the slow change that it was inaugurated by the internet. I get it. Yes, this is
because
something that I never thought.
these people on the internet also, one thing that helps them is that there is a massive divide between how people live in Moscow and St. Petersburg and how people live in, say, Khabarovsk. And internet has given the people access to see, just like in the Soviet era, they can now see how it's like in other countries. And that is
Yeah.
why also Ukraine was so dangerous to Putin, because if Ukraine would split off from Russia's sphere of influence and become its own thing, and then would become prosperous and a happy place to live, then imagine this: all the Russians who live in Russia who have relatives in Ukraine, because about 30% of Russians have relatives in Ukraine, they would just maybe start thinking, hey, maybe we don't need this Putin guy. Maybe what he's telling us is just to fill his own pockets instead of caring for us. You see? So internet
Yes.
is a major threat to Putin. That is why he's turning stuff off. Okay, I'm sorry,
Oh,
I'm
good.
getting random messages.
Ah,
No, it's apparently Russian propagandist Vladimir Solovyov has stated that this war can no longer be won by the goals that Russia has stated. Talking
I
about
see.
Italy, good thing that your government confiscated Mr. Solovyov's
Exactly.
mansions near the
Yes.
Lake of Komi.
Yes. Yes. We were a bit late. We had some embarrassing moment with the Swift situation, but I'm glad that we go into that direction finally. I wanted to say, what I wanted to ask you, I wanted to say something about,
Mhm.
I got amnesia. Yes, it was. Okay, what was it? Doesn't matter.
Chill, it's fine. It's fine. We're
uh,
relaxing here.
I think Kristaps had to do with the fact that right, that's the thing. So we were talking with some of my friends here in Latvia. We're on a very not from history graduate point of view or just in our own. We were having a relaxed conversation like this one tonight,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about the censorship of on some Western websites in Russia and the censorship that embraces different social media and things like that. We said to each other that somehow the internet, if it doesn't get, if you cannot surf on Wikipedia or Facebook or things like that, but you can still access artistic, I don't know, like for example, rap or some literature or everything else that maybe is not under the control, because not everything can be under the control of this ban, is impossible to stop change somehow, because every artistic value or whatever will have a way to communicate a different reality. So you kind of you're not skeptical about that, right? You feel that a lot of new information has filtered in Russia, and the millennials are way different than the older generation.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I agree with this
Yeah.
completely because they are also the major supporters of the opposition. YouTube has been a
Yes.
major source of all the situation because the older people, they don't know how to use the internet, so they are stuck to their television. Okay. That is why,
Yes.
for example, Putin hates the internet. And again, this might sound too crazy, but I have reports about this. Putin does not even read the news on the internet. He doesn't have a smartphone. What he does is that he receives multiple multiple kind of binders with information curated to him by his special services about what internet even is. I mean, the guy's 69 years old. He should, and he's been running the country for 20 years. I think that if we would just put him in some sort of, I don't know, he should just go and relax himself in Sochi and just lead his days there and leave the running of the country maybe to someone who's not from the Soviet era and hasn't been a KGB
Yes.
colonel. I think that definitely is the case.
Absolutely.
But Russia is afraid of internet. I just have this flash in my head since I make these political episodes and I sift through a lot of Russian media, but there was this case when in the small town, it was, I think, in 2019. Yeah, there was a video where in one of these smaller Russian villages in the countryside next to the Ural Mountains, the people, the company comes in because there's a business in town and they want to finally give people normal speed internet because they had only mobile internet before and now they're getting them the wired one, the broadband. And there was this lady
Mm.
who came out of the house and she yelled at the people getting the internet there, "We don't need your internet. Go to hell with all your internets." And that became a meme instantly around this because
Like
you see,
some
this is also kind of like this nostalgia because
yeah.
people, for example, love to remember how tasty the ice cream was in the Soviet Union. But what they don't get is that if we would have that ice cream right now, today, we wouldn't like it because it seemed tasty to them because it was the only ice cream they could get. There wasn't any other ice cream. And they had
Yes.
this one taste and they were kids. So what they're actually nostalgic for isn't ice cream. They're nostalgic for their, being kids, being happy and eating this ice cream.
Yes. And also, this is very important, this example with the ice cream that I heard before, which is just indicative of many other things. But it seems that, like, there have been some difficult moments for that generation, clearly. But it seems that this difficult moment in history have become also some sort of a strong identity that they have to defend, even if it was wrong. So there is a situation where there are many things that nowadays, at the eyes of when we read about the how tough and how unjust and unfair was the Soviet system. Finally, we hear about that, but it seems that for some people, is a in a tribal way is a way to find an identity. So it doesn't necessarily, this is the perception that I have, maybe I'm wrong. It doesn't necessarily question whether it was right or wrong, but any identity that you can fit and that can tell a bit about the pain that you've been through, you are going to defend it in a perverted way, almost like.
Yeah, I agree with you, and this identity has been not just in the Soviet era. This
No,
victimizing mentality, this whole thing, like which Putin tries to portray that, oh no, evil West has always oppressed us and everything. And that's been going through all the time. I mean, it also happened in Tsarist era, and it happened in the 90s. Um, and this whole thing, it really is there, I guess, because the Russian people, Russian nation as a whole, they have they have certain weird complexes that I would see, and this complex of always feeling betrayed and coping with their pain, because there has been a lot of pain for them, indeed,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
But this is one of these cases. What they probably don't understand is that so far Russian rulers have always tried to put the blame about the pain of the Russian people on someone else. They've
yes,
always said that it's the West's fault, it's someone else's fault. They've never actually taken responsibility. I
yes,
also, and that is why this is kind of growing, I think, because well, yeah, from one perspective, what else are they gonna do? From the other, yeah, like I say on my show, well, Russia is currently run by people who would rather steal 90% of
yeah.
$100 rather than 50% of $1,000. Okay.
Paniacha, yes, yes. I the kind of criminal mentality as well, I guess. But I think it was.
Ah, nasz mужик.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm
well,
an expert on this case.
no, I learned that word from you. I wanted to say something that kind of makes me remember about some things that have to do with my country, but in a different way, because it seems that, for example, in Italy, we have still a kind of a corrupted system, but there is some sort of curtain in between, so that the state wouldn't embrace that, will still
Hmm.
condemn that. So there is this lack of curtain in this situation in Russia, it
Yeah.
seems. And
Well, I have a question to you, by the way, because this will be interesting to people, because I'll obviously be sharing this to my listeners, but
yeah,
I just know about the Russian organized crime, which is basically all the post-Soviet era, because it's the same in Belarus and Ukraine.
yes,
But what's the main difference between Sicilian mafia and Russian mafia? Okay, what's because you have the Godfathers or something, and we
yeah.
have the lawful thieves, I suppose. You because you should know better, because
Uh,
I don't really, because I'm not an expert on Italian mafia. I just know
I'm
they exist,
gonna
but
I'm going to tell you the limit of my expertise in that, which has to do. There is one of my favorite literature, organized crime in Italy, to know about. But I have
mm.
to recognize that I will tell you more about that, and you will compensate my lack of knowledge with Russian mafia. Let's
Oh
make
yeah,
this deal. Okay.
of course,
So
no problems.
there is this thing that you said the other day that made a lot of sense in the podcast. You said that there is this. I don't know. I can't quote you, but there is this kind of positive. Proud factor from a thief in a Russian organized crime to take to take pride of the actual stealing.
Yeah.
So there is a noble thing to do. From the maybe the people in the gulags refusing to work. This thing would be this thing doesn't exist, and I'm not condoning Sicilian mafia or Camorra or Cosa Nostra,
Hmm.
but this idea, this nobilization of the act, doesn't exist in the Italian mafia.
Mm.
There is a level of hypocrisy which is more clearly intertwined, because ultimately you're stealing. Clearly, ultimately you're stealing in every organized crime, but there is no such thing as a sanctification of the thief.
Mm.
There is something that maybe makes it a bit more legit if you put it together with the fact that mafia is a para-state and is trying to compensate the lack of initiative of the real Italian state. So it wants to kind of substitute it a bit,
Yeah,
but there is no such. Yeah,
it kind of reminds me, because organized crime in Russia, in the Soviet Union, it was born in the
yeah,
same situation, because Soviets didn't care about the people at all. So and dealing in the black market, smuggling, and all these activities.
yeah,
That is why it was considered noble, because the
yeah,
government, because you are just providing a service. If someone wants to buy jeans, then you will smuggle in
yeah,
some jeans. Well, that turned
yeah.
into beating up people who also tried to smuggle in jeans, and
Of course, of course.
and
Allow me to
that
say,
stuff.
Kristaps, uh, the slight difference is the fact that there is no. You're totally right with that, but there is a one is it feels that Russian mafia has it can shout and scream the pride out of stealing. The
Mm-hmm.
Italian mafia, even if it does it ultimately, it wouldn't condone such a spectacularization of it. And there is all its hypocrisy and all its living off the myth of Hollywood. And they actually they how do you call it, the anti-hero trying to have trying to make justice by himself. Every time that I have to deal with somebody actually trying to nobilitate Italian mafia or particularly Sicilian mafia, I try to tell them that practically he tried to substitute himself to the state and he tried to rob the citizen instead of the state. There's no nobility in that. There is a
Mm.
stealing and there is maybe this glamorization of the myth that maybe it doesn't exist in the same volume in the Russian mafia, maybe, and that mostly we have to deal with. There were the 80s in Sicily where the mafia was at its apex, and there were terroristic years. Judges were exploding in the highways, as you probably know.
Oh, are
You
you
know
are you
this.
not talking about the 90s in the post-Soviet sphere? We had it in the
No,
90s.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
You had it in the 80s. Let's but yeah, look, our conversation just moved to organized crime.
So in Latvia, you had. Well, I talk you. This organized group, crime groups from Russia. I think they had the Yumta, which is the right. They request of some money
Yeah,
from any
racketeering,
shop or racketeering,
racketeering.
extortion. Yes,
I wanted
yeah,
to make an episode about that, and I went to some people who were into that stuff,
yeah.
and who are quite proudly still doing illegal things. And the problem is that as I was interviewing them, they literally dumped a whole gram of MDMA in my drink.
Oh,
I I
beautiful.
I went out like crazy. I nearly passed out. I felt really good at that point,
Oh,
but I
it's
knew what
great,
was happening.
great.
But the problem is, at least they got me to a hospital, because I almost had an MDMA overdose because of some
Oh my
random
goodness.
jokester. Random jokester just, you are drinking with people, you're interviewing these people from organized crime groups, and yeah, then they decide to pull a prank on you and just dump a whole gram. By the way, is
They
about
s-
six
they
doses.
spiked.
They spiked
My
my drink,
goodness, they
yeah,
could have killed
with
you. They
yeah,
could
but
have
they
killed you.
called. Well, they drove me to an ambulance, and apparently the guys who did it got into trouble. But yeah, I got about 6 times the normal dose. I was told, at least, of it. So yeah, I remember I even wrote the Latvian Journalists Association while I still could somewhat hold my phone, that this had happened to me. I don't even understand what I wrote to them, honestly speaking, because that's one of the freakiest things that has happened to me. And this is because I actually went to the organized crime guys and tried to make a study of them. Uh, yeah, I don't want to get
I
into more
understand that.
details because I want to contact them again, and not those guys, but let's just say, if something bad is going to happen to Latvia, I know some people who might know some things about it, but yeah, man, it's not a nice place to be. It's not a nice place to be, definitely, because, well, yeah, here you go,
No,
personal story from the Eastern Border podcast.
I have to say, I arrived here in 2018, and I can
Mm.
only I came here more now and then before 2018, and the Riga that I know now is totally different from the stories and the stuff that I read about the 90s. And I mean, it must have been a totally different scenario. But now it feels extremely safe compared to that. You agree with me now?
A lot of younger people might not know this, but European Union actually did a lot of things here. For starters, people might not agree on their policies or whatever, but one thing they did is that we don't have the levels of corruption that we had before. Corruption is like super low, and that helped a
Yes.
lot. Like, imagine what you can do if your government, instead of stealing your money, actually uses that to provide public services. Who would have
Tell me
thought?
about it. Yes. I mean,
Uh,
and there is a perception that is like I think that if you take Russia, well, good luck with that. If you take Russia out of the map for a second, sorry for my stupid sense of humor, but and you think about
it's okay.
and you think about maybe Estonia or well, Lithuania somehow, maybe Sweden. There are some virtuous country around Latvia that I think if they represent an advantage geographically because I think that some countries are inspired by their neighbor and vice versa, or things like that. And maybe, unfortunately, in south of Italy, we don't see that yet, and it's a bit of a shame. But south of Italy, I mean. So no, I think the Latvia that I have known myself, I know that there are still some problems, but I see a country that from different things is actually doing pretty well. I'm talking about even littering around. Latvians don't litter around. There are
I
hardly or people that live in Latvia in general, I might say, maybe. I
see
don't
that's
know.
I know, but like that actually stuns me sometimes when I go to European cities. The dirtiest place I have ever seen is Berlin. I don't know why, but Berlin is just terrible. Like
Berlin is dirty? I never imagined that. Right.
Berlin is really dirty, like really dirty. It's really it's big and it's cool and it's and in Berlin is the best place to go to party because if a pub says
Yeah, I've
24-hour
heard.
party, it will be a 24-hour party. But the streets are really messy. That's one thing I don't like about Berlin. But Latvia, well, we're
Yes.
we're all introverted people. Like the few people that you've interviewed are the exception of the rule. Normally, we're all like very sad and don't talk to each other, and that's part of the KGB legacy as well, because people denunciated each
Yeah.
other. But
Yeah.
overall, hey, well, it's not so bad. One thing that I like to say about Latvia is that nothing ever happens in Latvia, and that's good. We've had no natural disasters. We've had no terrorist attacks. We just like to be left alone and sit in our corner of the world, and that's it.
Let's keep
And
it that way.
let's
Absolutely.
keep it that way, yeah. Because
Yes.
for one, to be honest, I might react like a typical Latvian, but hey, you're from Italy. You have like warm, nice weather there. You're from Sicily, even. It's like Mediterranean. Why would you come to a
Yeah.
place with so cold winters,
Many,
man?
so many times I've been asked that question, so many
I
times. And
know,
every time that
I
I give an
know.
answer, every time that I give an answer, I feel like, yeah, sure. What's the name of your girlfriend? I guess, I guess some sort of. But I always give the same cheesy answer. Yes, I do miss my country a bit, but I used to live in London for 8 years before I moved
Mm.
here. But I really like the fact that it's calmer and quieter than exactly what you said. There is the nature is beautiful and just outside the city. And I would say another thing that I like is the fact that it's not too chaotic, and you got real seasons still. England doesn't have real seasons like this. It doesn't have a real winter or real autumn or a real. Okay, summers are getting particularly hot, but that's okay. I mean, as long as we don't melt down, but it's a country with beautiful seasons where you can really tell the difference, and also I have learned how to appreciate the kind of more introvert people because at the end of the day there are not everybody is, but it's just a barrier. And as soon as you know someone, everybody seems to be so nice like
Oh, thank you.
like Sicilians. Maybe we give everything all together. Sometimes in the street we have to do all of that and all the tarantella or whatever. But ultimately, we need to meet people. We need to know them a bit more. And once you do that, the Latvia is particularly
I think
interesting, like
uh,
any
uh,
country. Yeah.
one thing that we have in common, and I know this because the previous Italian that I spoke with was Daniele Bolelli. He was on my show
Ah, yeah, of course.
a while ago, and I've spoken with him, and we agreed on the fact that I think Latvia has one thing in common with Italy, and that is kind of our family values. We really value each other's family. It's kind of this
Yeah,
tribal
yeah.
family mentality. And yeah, don't mess with old Latvian grandmas. Just don't mess with old Latvian grandmas.
I didn't
Oh,
get the chance to meet any, but they're pretty tough, are they?
well, yeah. I mean, imagine an old Italian grandma. Now add Soviet experience to it. You get the picture.
Oh, look, I've seen in, I think I've seen, I think if I can describe a picture, I don't know if you refer to that, Maria Yela, clearly know
Uh,
what is it. I think I was walking one day and, there are some cyclists, sometimes me included, sometimes we don't follow the regulations. Sometimes we cycle, we're not too good at it. And we cycle on the boardwalk and I saw a guy just cycling very close by an old lady with a foulard and everything. I think she saw him coming and she just banged her bag on his head and the guy just it was but extremely precise as well. And yeah, I get what you're saying.
Hey man,
Latvia's grandma.
Latvia's grandma is great. Like I don't know. What I feel really awesome and nice about is the fact that hey, you're making this show from Riga, and
Yeah,
yeah, I'm mostly happy because look, when I started podcasting in Riga,
yeah,
there was like no one else at all, like completely, no one was
I
doing
believe
this,
you.
and then now look at you, look at Joe, look at everyone, and I'm really happy that all this is growing because otherwise, yeah, when I was invited to some conferences about this, I was like, oh, tell me about other Latvian podcasts, and I have to go silent and really dig deep into Google to find any. So I'm happy
There probably are plenty. Yeah. No,
I'm
no, go
really
ahead.
happy.
I appreciate. Yeah.
No, I'm really happy that the whole podcasting is working. One thing, by the way, that this war thing really messed up in my plans was that I was planning and working on a podcast conference of the Baltics. All the people who make podcasts from the Baltics would come together in Riga, and we would have a conference and share experiences, look at the data, talk about problems, talk about editing, talk about everything that matters, all the stuff, just for the content creators, just for podcasters to come
Yes.
together. This is something that I still want to do because this war and just having too much to do has sadly killed that opportunity because it was at the beginning it was supposed to happen at the end of February. Then because of our COVID restrictions, it got moved to March, and now I had to do what I had to do. And yeah, but in case of whatever, I know that a lot of podcasters are listening to your show. Hey guys, self-advertising here, but contact me at theeasternborder@gmail.com because I want to do this. I want just I
Yes.
want to make sure that all of us come together,
Yeah.
and talk.
Yeah.
That matters to me. That's one thing that I really wanted to say, by the way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that look, I'll give you an example. This idea of the Kūla podcast started with the fact that during the
Also, love
pandemic,
I love
I thought
I love the name. I love the name. Have you
I
explained it
was
to?
lucky enough. I can try. I think I was
Oh,
a friend of mine kind of suggested it from Latvia, and I said like, look, I'm looking for something that is
oh,
that it makes sense in English and that is in Latvian. It sounds cool. And we were. I think I was walking in Sabile one day with my girlfriend, and at some point I saw in Kurzeme, I presume where you come from,
yeah, yeah.
and I saw some grass burning, and my girlfriend made the joke. And she, oh, that's cool, or that's Kūla, or whatever. Probably a Kūla
That's
as in
cool.
burning, or
Kūla is the
Kūla.
name. Kūla is the
Yeah.
name of the old grass that stays there. But yeah,
Yes.
technically, see, I am technically from Kurzeme, but I've spent so much time in Latgale, in Ludza, that I consider myself a
Oh,
Latgalian because
Latgalian instead.
yeah, because my family comes from Kurzeme. That's the region where the Coronian Vikings went around and did stuff. But
Yes.
see, the
Yes.
thing is, the person that I'm named after, my grandfather, he was a Lutheran preacher in Soviet, and
Ah.
he lived in Jelgava. But then And then he saved some Jews from the Holocaust, and then some of those Jews that he saved afterwards got into the communist city council, and they told him that
Uh-huh.
basically if you don't move away, then they'll send you to Siberia because you're a priest. So they moved all the way to Latvia, on the other side of the country. So yeah, I guess I'm both because I love Kurzem, but that's why my show is called Eastern Border because it was literally created 20
Exactly.
kilometers from the
I
Russian
got it.
border. Yeah,
I was
and
wondering, but also, uh, like I guess all the situations, if you look also back in your family or things like that, they might have motivated you. Also, you were born during Soviet Union, I guess you're 32.
mhm.
So just, so I think
1989,
they motivate, right?
best year,
They,
1989.
1989, I guess, what is it like when Tautas Fronte was making a strong point in those days, I guess, as
Yeah, I
well.
was I
Or,
I'm born 5 days after the Baltic Way. I was in the hospital
yes,
during that time.
5 days.
My
Oh,
dad went to the Baltic Way. My mom couldn't because she was in the hospital awaiting me.
she was in
So,
perfect. Well, that will have to be postponed for that. Absolutely. But I thought it's interesting how, for example, for me personally, one thing that is very important for me, and I don't consider it necessarily a mission anymore because I prefer to talk about it in the right place, is to actually try to the how do you call it? The put apart this misconception of how Italian organized crime is fascinating and and actually is a good thing and whatever, which is pretty easy battle compared to yours. Mine is an easier battle than yours because clearly it's been mythicized as Count Dracula and things that probably it's something that is totally down to Hollywood with that. So, but that is my personal involvement with history because I know that so many of my people died because of organized crime, and when I see somebody that wants to say how elegant and how cool it is, I try to talk some sense, but I try to reserve that sense for the right conversation because sometimes people don't want to necessarily hurt you. They're just not too informed, which makes sense. It makes total sense. They know evil. They don't try to hurt you. They really don't know enough.
mhm.
But for you and for some people that grew up in Latvia, there is almost a legacy of pain that goes through the whole family of war and things like that. And I wanted to ask you, how does it feel? You must have said it already somehow, but how does it feel to have this awful moment of validation of what you've been saying for such a long time? And did you did you get? Are you still pissed off about
No,
it?
I was never
No.
pissed off because, for one, let me tell you, for me personally, this is not a challenge of past crimes and past things. For me, it's a challenge of what happened now because I have
Yeah.
suffered personally from Putin's regime. I've been put under sanctions. I've been beaten up on the street. My marriage was destroyed because of this. I've witnessed a lot. And right now, I can't give up, man. I can't give up. I look at this from a weird perspective because my first degree was a philosophy one, and even over here on my trip here, I still carry Marcus Aurelius Meditations, as they're called in English. I carry the Latvian translation with me. I consider myself to be a Stoic. I would love to. Of course, no real Stoic would admit that, but Seneca and Marcus Aurelius drove me through insane amounts of pain, and I'm really happy for the people that taught me that. So, hey, that's something. And I recommend these books highly to everyone who's going through some pain. But for me, it's a personal war. It's a personal issue. And for me,
Yes.
it's not about coping with pain. For me, it's about okay, this has happened, but we had plans for this. Because, like I said, I told you I was speaking about this for years, but I really also had a plan what I will do exactly when such a war comes, whether it be Georgia, Ukraine, whatever. I have a plan. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just following that plan that I have had for 5 years now to the letter. And I'm doing my job. Why? Because destiny or fate or how you call it has put me in a position where no other person from Latvia is at this point. And
Yes.
if I show my call, if I call myself the Eastern Border, and I literally would like to, in pleasant times, call myself the kind of the grandfather of Latvian podcasting, right? But I should act like one. So for me, it's
Yes.
personal. For me, it's painful. But for me, it's also, again, quoting Marcus
Meaning.
Aurelius, it's the meaning. And the thing is, like,
Yeah.
it's not about how long you live. It's
How you
about
live.
how you live. Yes,
Yes.
that is my motto, and I'm just doing my best. And I can, oh look, I can get sad later. Right now, help is needed, information is needed, disinformation must be stopped. We have to work together. I will afford myself the luxury of getting sad about this and maybe mope when I'll get home. Okay, that's it.
Yes.
And
Yes. I understand.
people call me brave. Instead, I call those other people who call me brave people who haven't read Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. Highly
Good point.
recommended
Good point.
authors.
I I don't call you brave just because you gave me an easy way. Give me a reason not to call you brave, but I call you extremely useful for what's going on. And
I am trying
also
to.
I when you told me a bit about the way that you feel, I thought we are better people, and no, we are. If we do this, if we try to find meaning, I'm not talking about me necessarily. I'm talking about in general. If we try to live by meaning or things like that, a day will be slightly better than a day without meaning, I would say. And I don't know how to explain it semantically. Meaning,
No, it's fine.
we
Like
could live in different ways,
the thing
but
is,
I, yeah, yeah,
I believe that people should not dismiss the old authors.
the old
People, the
authors.
old authors, yes, the
Yes,
Greeks and the Romans. What I hear a
yeah,
lot is that people ignore the past, but we should learn from it. And if you read
yes,
these histories, then there's a lot to read from. And they are relevant to this day because even though materials have changed and needs have changed, the way how human brain works and how we think, that hasn't changed as much. We have to respect our
yes,
past just because, for one, how do you know where you stand in this world, in this cosmos, right? If you don't know where you're coming from. Our history and for me specifically, philosophy gives me that basis. I am here, I am doing this, and like you said, gives the meaning. The very fact that
yes.
the very fact that I've been so lucky to do full time the one job that I love the most doesn't mean I can rest easy. No, what it means is that I don't mind not sleeping, working 72 hours straight and doing this. Why? Because I love what I'm doing. And I can, and when someone posts or tweets or like you when you said that you would interview me, that is the fuel that keeps me going. You threw another you threw another kind of you threw another piece of wood to the fire, and that keeps me
Same.
going. And my responsibility here is that I I have to say that I've done a lot of work, but I have to say a lot to luck. Thanks to luck that I just got noticed and things happened. And just between you asking me about this interview and before we actually doing this, my Twitter followers tripled because of one lucky tweet. Okay, so there's a lot of luck in it. But if you don't
Yeah.
put all your work in, if you don't try hard, then no luck will help you. Nothing will help you. I mean,
Yes.
that's the work. There are some things that some people might consider naive, maybe, but I believe that maybe turning back to kind of our lessons of the past and trying to become not more not more intelligent, not more smart, but maybe we should just take a step back and try to become wiser. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Using this information, we need to have this collective wisdom, and I think we've lost it a bit. I'm
You
sorry
make me
for
think
this
about
super deep. I'm sorry for this super deep
no,
subject matter because
no.
to your audience, I'm drinking beer and I'm just being chill. But these are the thoughts.
This is the essence. This is the essence of the podcast because one day a guest that a friend of mine, Alexander Kirillovs, that he was a guest, and I say hi to him. He asked me a couple of times when we were talking about the genesis of this podcast that he helped me through. He asked me, Fabrizio, why do you want to do this? I guess I probably didn't put it on those terms, but that was the main idea. For me, that I've been in two different countries. Essentially, I've been in England and then in Latvia. For me, there is something magic about actually trying to grasp a truth about a country, and but this truth lives through people, and the way that you kind of get to grasp this reality is not just in the books that really play a big role and they're written by people. There's something between the lines where you talk to me that is invisibly establishing a common denominator that I always desperately try to grasp, because there is a
Mm.
common denominator about Italians, despite we're all kind of different. There is a common denominator about British people. There is one about Latvia, and I'm glad that you also we are digressing in different things, because this is the real essence of the Kūla podcast. But look, I cannot ignore what's going on, and I'm super happy that you're bringing me first-hand news from at the same time from
Hey,
Poland. I understand that.
at the moment
Yeah.
from Poland,
So
yes. The problem is I can't go deep into Ukraine because I am banned from Russia, and I know that I was supposed to go in Lvov, but then I got messages from various sources that told me that if I go to Lvov, I will be shot. Not if, I will, because there are insiders there, and my show is being listened to by Russian secret services and also by CIA. A lot of people listen to my show from Langley, Washington, where
yeah,
the training base
I'm
is located.
sure.
So like, I'm sorry, but it's not like don't go. It'll be dangerous. It's like don't go. You will be killed. There is a difference there.
You are you've been there in a different occasion, though. I listened to
Mm-hmm.
some podcasts before
Yeah,
the
been to Donbass
situation,
as well.
and
Yeah. One
yeah,
thing I want to say is that, yeah, one person, if you listen to my older podcast about my previous visit to Ukraine, is that I spent a whole like couple of hours being shelled by artillery in the basement, together with a guy who owned
yes,
the building, and together with a lieutenant called Alexander. And he told me that I should tell his story to people. Well, now Alexander is dead because he was shot by Russians in the first days of the war when the rockets came. That's that's a whole different feeling when I'm pretty sure a lot of people in Latvia know this, but maybe to your foreign listeners, the feeling that someone to whom you've spoken personally, who's entrusted you his story, when their wife messages you and tells you that they're dead, I I have no tolerance for all this neo-Nazi bullshit that's happening in Russia. Like these Z signs, it's just look at it. It's
can
literally
we talk?
neo-Nazism.
Drinking some good Polish blonde, some Polish lager.
Uh, I don't know what this is. It's called vodka. It's kind of like Tsasa, a bit. Yeah,
Like fast.
we're all beer drinkers. I don't know. I will
I am.
probably. No. I mean, it's not about that. You know what? I've understood that like a lot of people drink vodka. Some people, and you in the
Mhm.
South, you drink wine, but
Yeah,
we're stuck to beer. But we're stuck to beer, by the way, because we were ruled by Germans for 700 years. So we stuck to beer.
it was kind of enlightening when you talked about the non-monolithic Russian empire that will be is ruin more than the internet. It will be probably a slow burn. And I would say the other thing that I wanted to ask you about has to do with I asked this to Joe and to Joe Organ, and of course maybe it sounds a bit naive, but I'm interested in it because my expectation for the call it economic blockade that the West imposed on Russia, my expectation wasn't that I was expecting they would have done less. So I was positively surprised.
I also expected less. That was one
Yeah,
of
all
my
right.
recommendations. That was one of my recommendations to Dan Carlin that they should go after the oligarchs' yachts and all that stuff. and I really didn't expect that. That was my best case scenario that they should do it, but that they actually did it. Wow, that was crazy. Also talking about Joe.
Yes.
Hi Joe. Joe, I wish to mention this. Joe Horgan personally donated me a microphone, which I have been using to record my episodes over here, the portable
Very
one.
good.
Joe's a hero. And Joe, check out Latvia Weekly as well, people, because Joe Horgan has been actually super helpful to us. We consider him a friend of the show, and now you, of course, as well. So
Thank you. I'm a big fan as well. Without him, my poor knowledge of Latvian for the moment, kind of his podcast helped me knowing what was going on daily. But I'm learning Latvian slowly. I hope one day I can have the same conversation in Latvian
hey
that
man,
we're
look,
having
I
today.
don't know any Italian. I know Latvian, English, Russian. I can understand German, and then I know a bit of Japanese.
You know, when you live in a country like you don't live in Italy, but the thing I don't need to tell you that. But talking about that truth that I was trying to follow, I was
Mhm.
trying to grasp that truth about people. Language will open more doors, definitely, than translation into English, I guess. Okay, now I'm going to
Uh,
tell you this. We're going to finish your style. We're going to talk a bit outrageously about this Z that is appearing here and there.
This is just a very new thing, but Z means Zapad,
Ah,
which means north. It's basically because they had to mark their own vehicles because they're very similar to Ukrainian vehicles, and with some signs they would recognize. So Z for Zapad, because that was coming from Russia, and there's other forces. There's a list on them. I know that Z with a square around it, those are Russian forces from Crimea, but Z means Zapad, um, and that it just turned into this violence symbol right now. But originally it was just nothing more. But right now Putin is just grasping at straws and trying to build something. But it stands for Zapad, and it's just the military markings.
so the echo that is having is totally involuntary from the Russian point of view. The echo that this symbol is
Oh,
having. They
some of them are voluntary because don't forget, it's been 20 years since Putin has been brainwashing Russia. He killed Russian independent media and TV in 2004 by the death of NTV.
No, Kristaps, I didn't mean
Hmm?
that. Clearly, there is some voluntary evil. What I meant is like the way that we are from the West looking at this Z for Zapad and North, the way
Oh no
that
no
we're
no no!
looking at it,
He's now
we are
he
seeing
is now
more than,
no no no. He has now turned youth organizations. He has basically Hitler
yeah,
Jugend with Zapad and everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It started out as this military symbol, and now they have
yeah,
adopted it to fund
yeah,
all sorts of things. It's gone crazy. It's kind of like a
yeah.
swastika for them at this point. And yeah, I'm not afraid to use this word because if you compare how Miza za Putina, I mean, the way that they're using this, it literally, if you put them side to side with some stuff from Nazi Germany or fascist Italy, you say the same thing. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
and it's and the worst part is that they portray themselves as anti-fascists. They say that we are the fascists now, right? But then again,
Oh,
it
yeah,
might
yeah,
be it might be shocking to the West. But hey, we in Eastern Europe, we've been called fascists forever. One thing that brings hope though is that
yes,
today I watched a video in Russia in a small town where one of these people who actually had like he obviously drove a Western car, right? But he had put Zaputina and all the logans on his car on the back windshield.
yeah,
And
yeah.
apparently
But
he got his tires slashed, and he got a neo-Nazi typed on this. So there's a lot of
good
people
for you.
who don't like this. A lot of people who don't like this.
Yeah.
And he was like, and then he put this on the internet. He literally complained on Twitter, "Oh no, I'm pro Putin. I'm supporting my people." Actually, no, you're not, because your regime has been suppressing actual real Russian things. One thing that I
Yeah.
don't like from the West, one thing that I really don't like from the West right now about this, which has happened in
Yeah.
America, is the fact that throwing out Russian books and Russian culture won't help at all. And
No.
it's just going to make it
No.
worse. because in Russia, I'm always saying this is Putin's war, not Russia's war. Okay, and in the United States, I've heard reports that they're throwing out books by Lev Tolstoy, an example, and stuff like Russian culture gets thrown out, which hurts me because Lev Tolstoy, like I was born on the same day as Lev Tolstoy. We shared the same birthday, and he was a Christian pacifist. And I have taken a lot of lessons from his works in my life. So always remember that the government is not the people, and that must be
No,
told to Latvians always. They're
exactly
just pro
so. And
Putin.
it's been very nice to hear that, like, for example, there have been some maybe bad action towards Russian speaking people, but that's not the right thing to do. As you said, some are waking up now after years of brainwashing, and some others, just the fact that they speak Russian doesn't mean that they abide to the same ideology. And also, there are so many Russian speakers that not necessarily.
Yeah,
So
but the
that's
but
the
the,
same
but
thing.
the sadness here is the
Yeah,
fact that the sanctions need to continue, I think, and some people will only get to real information once like we say in the post-Soviet sphere, once the fridge beats the television.
yeah,
Sadly, we are at the point where yes, we are hurting the Russian people. We are. Let's be honest about this. We are literally hurting the Russian people,
hmm,
especially the women, by the way,
yeah,
because Russia
yeah.
does not produce any tampons, any
No,
hygiene packets, whatever, none. I'm very sad to say this, but right now we should push the Russian people to maybe understand something. And I'm really sad that I have to say because I hate hurting people. But right
yeah,
now, maybe only the fact there's lack of this can help. Because you know what? I feel bad about this, but then I look at my Ukrainian friends and their cities are being bombed. So, you know, different things. Also, what pisses me off
yeah.
is people who speak about gasoline prices. Yes, our gasoline prices are going to increase, but we are literally, I call it, we pay the freedom tax for it. We pay, we pay extra money for our gasoline, so to not be invaded by Russia. Okay, it's a
I've heard
complex
all sorts.
situation.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's a complex
yeah.
situation. Nothing is
we
simple
we
here.
are uh, we are privileged to we don't wear too often other people's shoes, and we compare with, like, just I've heard all sorts of stuff, but ultimately you're right. Everything has to be contextualized, but also there are some normal rights that are not a given in Russia, and also they are paying. They will pay. The degree of poverty will
I
rise,
I I
and
honestly hope
hopefully,
I hope that after this war ends, that
yeah,
maybe we take the correct steps and we help rebuild.
yeah, yeah,
Right
yeah,
now, we must help Ukraine and help their freedom. But after the war ends,
yeah.
we must not leave the Russians alone, because then we will only have more hatred and more damage. We must
Just
help rebuild.
yeah, before it ends, to create, let's call them a different type of corridor in those provinces to actually help them leaving before this thing is over. It would be it would be right, but I'm talking like totally without knowing how possible it is or things like that. But my
Well, the
friend, I'm
problem
going
is,
to,
like you heard in the last
yeah,
episode, the problem is that Putin made some corridors, then he planted landmines on them.
you
I
need to
had
get some
never,
rest. And my friend,
no, I had never thought I would experience this in my life, and I'm really thankful for you to have me on this show. But I really need to have some rest now. Otherwise, I'll
absolutely,
just stress
absolutely.
out.
I wanted to grant you some rest already 50 minutes ago. You've been more than polite to grant me some more. Let's get in touch. Hopefully, in not
Of
too distant
course.
future, we can get, hopefully we can get a nice beer, Mieriela, me and you, and talk about this in a slightly better, maybe something better will happen. Hopefully. So
Thanks, man.